For the latest in strategic affairs, subscribe to our YouTube channel. Click the bell icon for updates.
This is Strat News Global. I'm Amitabh Revi. On the talking point today, we have Ambassador Syed Akbaruddin on the UN sanctioning another Pakistan-based terrorist after China released its hold. A warm welcome to all our viewers and a warm welcome to Ambassador Syed Akbaruddin in Hyderabad, though it's chilly here in the national capital. Good to see you, Ambassador.
Thank you very much, Amitabh. It's nice and bright and sunny here. So we are enjoying the deep south quite well.
Ambassador, just looking at developments over the week where Abdur Rahman Makki's designation and how significant you think it is a win for India in sanctioning another Pakistan-based terrorist despite China's block, hold, in essence, a veto.
So, Amitabh, need to understand that the global law of security listing is a novel phenomenon. It's a phenomenon of the 21st century. Primarily, it relates to the 9/11 terrorist attack and the subsequent aftermath of that. And hence, it's about a 20-year-old law, and Pakistan has the dubious distinction of having the largest number of individuals sanctioned and listed on that UN list. That said, it's been a difficult task for us during these 20 or plus years to get people, individuals listed because primarily of the objection of China. China has been the protector of Pakistani nationals when India proposes them for listing. So the first listing that we tried very hard for more than a decade was for Masood Azhar. It took us 10 years. This one took us less than a year. So you can see that there is a speeding up of that process. It still is a laborious process. It entails heavy lifting with diplomatic give and take of a very intense order. But we are moving in the right direction. There are still some in the pipeline, and I hope that the next ones should not take as long as the first one took, or even as long as the second one took.
So as you're mentioning Masood Azhar, that was during your tenure that India succeeded in getting Masood Azhar listed as a global terrorist. As you said, that took what, from 2009 to 2019. But tell us a little bit more on what goes on behind the scenes to pressure a country like China, a veto wielding member in the P5 member in the Security Council, to not put what is called this technical hold.
So, Amitabh, that's a work in progress. Making countries understand that terrorism is perhaps the most egregious of violations of human rights is been a difficult task in the case of our neighbor China, primarily because of its political engagements with Pakistan. So what usually happens is when a country proposes a listing, it's always about an individual and an organization. These listings are not about countries. Yet, for some reason, China and Pakistan have concluded that any listing related to an Indian effort in the UN is about Pakistan. So it just tries to use all the technical tools available at its disposal to delay the process. So what does it do? When a listing is done, usually within 15 days, if no country objects, it gets approved. China usually puts what it calls a technical hold within the 15 days, which means it wants a longer time frame to decide on it. Usually that time frame can be expanded from 15 days to 6 months, and can further be extended by another 6 months. So it's about a year's time that you can play around with the technical legalities. And the Chinese practice has been that the end of that, in several cases, they then say, well, we've looked at the details, the hold we had placed on, and now we have decided to block this request because they do not provide any rationale. Because in the committee's discussions, you do not need to provide a rationale. So they just say, we've considered it and we do not find it suitable for approval. And that's what it is, a veto, which blocks the entire international community's efforts. And China has repeatedly done this only for Pakistani nationals, primarily for Pakistani nationals who are who have a track record of trying to undermine Indian stability, threatening Indian interests, and those acting in Jammu and Kashmir or elsewhere in India. There are another 130 or so Pakistanis who are listed who are not linked with this aspect, and China has never stopped them. So it's pretty clear. The linkage is clear. The interests are congruent, and we have this task of not only tackling Pakistan, but tackling a double team of China and Pakistan, with one of them being permanently in the Security Council. And so we worked with other partners in this effort. Ultimately, these are all, like all negotiations, these relate to give and take. Diplomacy is always about give and take. So there are times where China needs something else, and at that time it eases up because it will not get its say in areas it wants, and we are able to get our proposals through.
Just a message to our viewers: if you like this video, this interview, and this topic, do press the thumbs up button and share the link to this video as widely as possible. Ambassador, since you're mentioning China, it seems so illogical or impractical in the larger sense. Does China's Iron Brotherhood with Pakistan actually supersede Beijing's worry of terrorism emanating from Pakistan and Afghanistan? How do they justify it to themselves?
So you're right. It's a very good question, because every decision, there's a price to pay. So far, China has got away with it because it thinks the price to pay is manageable. In the cases where you raise the price, they then find it difficult to pay, and then they try and work out some other via media to give up on the hold or the all the block. So the name of the game in this is, if you are able to mount immense pressure, if you are able to then find out loopholes and areas where China needs your support, that's when the trade-off can take place. Because currently, the way the system works is that this is done in a subterranean manner in one of the subcommittees of the UN. It is not done in the UN Security Council. It's done in a subcommittee of the Security Council. Now, by that, what I mean is, it is dealt by sort of lower-level diplomatic functionaries. All they have to do is to just write a letter and send it by email saying, I don't approve. There is no discussion on this. There is no back and forth on this. So it's an easy way to block India's objectives. Once you raise this, and that's what we had done in 2017, we raised the price by threatening that we would go to the Security Council and put this to an open vote, and it is up to China to decide whether it would like to, in full public glare, vote in favor of a terrorist when 14 other countries are not are totally against it? Now, it's always difficult for any country to be isolated and especially vote in favor of a terrorist, because that will require explanation, that will require to and forth, that will be visible to the world. So perhaps the way forward is to make it more transparent, to make it much more understanding of what is happening there, and that will add pressure and help us in our longer term goals.
This pressure, Ambassador, as you're talking about, India moved to list 5 more terrorists last summer. I think it was in June. There's Sajid Mir, there's Talha Saeed, there's Abdul Rauf. As you said, there are lots more in the pipeline.
You're right. We moved for 5. Only 1 is done. There are 4 more to go. Let's not forget who these people were. These people were, for example, Abdul Rauf Asgar. Abdul Rauf Asgar is wanted in the IC-814 hijacking. Usually, or look at Sajid Mir. He is wanted in the Mumbai killings during the Mumbai attack. Now, if you look at the whole architecture of this listing, it's supposed to be preemptive in nature. That means that it will prevent terrorists from taking action in the future. Yet, here are cases where they've already taken action. There is enough evidence against that, and still China weighs in favor of them, not realizing that the threshold that is required to list people in the case of these individuals, there is far more evidence available. So it's not only doing injustice to a preventive measure, it is actually undermining the quest for justice.
Again, a message to our viewers. You're probably seeing that scroll at the bottom of your screen. If you haven't joined our Telegram channel or circle, you can do that, and you'll get latest updates for when we put up stories, articles on our website, and videos like this with Ambassador Akbaruddin on our YouTube channel. Ambassador, again, Makkie's designation comes at the beginning of the new year, just after India's non-permanent membership of the UNSC ended on the 31st of December. Now, that's unlikely to be coincidental. Maybe China didn't want to release the hold when India was still a member. There are 10 new members who also it seemed, did not support China.
So you're right. It's pretty clear that if China wanted, it could have agreed to this designation and listing, even while India was a member of the Security Council. It's a form of pique. It doesn't behove a big country to do this on behalf of a terrorist. But that said, I think what they also wanted to wait and make sure was not, you see, every year, 5 non-permanent members move out and 5 new join. So out of the 10, there are 5 new members coming in as non-permanent every year. So I suppose perhaps China felt that let me wait and see whether out of the 5 I can get some support or not. Finding that there is no support, it remains isolated. It may have taken a call that it's not worth continuing this battle to keep Makkie's designation on hold, because it will not have any support. And should this matter be taken to the next level in a transparent manner, it would have difficulties in providing an explanation for its actions.
I correct myself, 5 new permanent members, not 10, as I mentioned in the question. But then since you're mentioning the members of the Security Council, Ambassador, how important is the support or even co-sponsorship, especially from the US and France, of India's proposals to designate these terrorists?
So in purely legal terms, one sponsor is enough. However, co-sponsorship indicates that whoever is ready to join in now owns the proposal as much as the initiator of the proposal. And the US, of course, being a permanent member, has greater opportunities to do trade-offs in the Security Council and its committees than an elected member would have, because it has a greater say in the decision-making process. So it is always good to have permanent members on your side, because they add to your ability to then pursue your interests, because they also would be willing to be able to support your case, and more importantly, help you in areas where you feel that your interests, if not met, you could do damage to others' interests.
Again, the opaqueness of the UN system, I think you use the word subterranean for subcommittees that deal with issues like this. We are, diplomats like you who are heading missions wouldn't possibly, and the public would definitely not know the opaqueness of the system, in the sense, did China give in because they wanted a quid pro quo from the US and something else, and some other UN issue, or even some other issue outside the UN, right?
You're right. It's not even a translucent process. It is opaque, as you mentioned. Forget about transparency. There's no translucency also in it. That said, it serves the current permanent members' interest to keep this as opaque as possible, because each one, not only those, but the others, each one has a veto. So actually, 15 of them are in a position to veto anything. And hence, the rules remain where they were, although they don't serve the broader purpose of global security, because there are 25 such committees or some committees of the Security Council, and every day or the other, there are taking actions or not taking actions on some part or some proposal or the other. Now, from a global perspective, it makes no sense when you are acting on behalf of all states that you are following a process and a procedure which is not accountable to anybody, and not even are you clear on what you ordinary people are not even clear on what was the basis of decision making. So there is a case for a review of the procedures. There is certainly a case for greater transparency, greater accountability, and that will easily speed up many of these decisions.
What about the view, Ambassador, that these designations and sanctions are symbolic? I mean, what real effect does it have on Pakistan's behavior in sponsoring terrorism? I mean, if posts on social media are correct, then Makki issued a video statement after this from jail.
Right. I think both are very valid observations. So let's take one at a time. Let's take what is the impact of this. While you may think that a travel ban, anyway, Makki is not going to fly out of Pakistan, so it does not mean anything. You may also feel that given the way finances are routed, it will not matter if his bank accounts are frozen, because there are other ways of transferring money. But I think global security law has progressed, and it has progressed in very interesting ways. For example, as part of the FATF, which is the Financial Action Task Force, there are requirements that you have to take actions against listed terrorists. Otherwise, you could move from one zone to another. So from a gray list to a black list, or from no list to a gray list. And what does that mean? Once you get onto these lists, your entire financial architecture comes under scrutiny. And what happens? When you go out for loans, when you go out looking for finances, it impacts, because the amount of paperwork that you have to submit, the amount of regulations that you have to meet are higher, of a higher standard. And the risk level is assessed as higher by those who will be providing you loans. So global designation is the first step. There are other steps that you can take following the designation. So I wouldn't dismiss designation as just a cosmetic exercise, because it has real world implications of a financial nature, which will bite and increase the financial burden on states who do not fulfill those requirements. So that's about the designation and why it is important. Now, this issue of verbal duplicity by Makki, of trying to masquerade as somebody whose human rights have been impinged upon. Let us not forget, human rights terrorism is the worst form of violation of human rights. Makki, if he thinks, let me again put it, if he thinks that his human rights have been impinged upon, and if he feels that there is no case against him, he did not get a chance to explain, he needs to understand first that this is a preventive measure. So the idea is to prevent somebody from doing something. Now, if he's still innocent, he is never planning anything, then there is an ombudsman in the UN process. Let's not forget, his friend and collaborator Hafiz Saeed also thought and made the same argument after he was listed. I remember sometime a few years back, when I was permanent representative there, Hafiz Saeed made exactly the same case that Makki is making today. And he put it up to the ombudsman, who looked at the evidence and just threw out the request of Hafiz Saeed, because we had enough evidence against Hafiz Saeed. So if Makki wants to go the Hafiz Saeed's way, he is welcome to do so. And he will reach the same conclusion as Hafiz Saeed reached, which means once designated, he is not going to get away scot-free anymore. That said, the last point I want to make in this whole process is that these are all preventive tools which actually India is using in a retrospective manner. We are not using these as preventive, because these are all hardened criminals who have a track record. So if they think just by talking verbally and trying to put out statements on the social media, they are going to go scot-free, that's not going to happen. They just need to get used to a different way of life now. And this is part of our quest for justice for those who have been egregiously harmed by their activities. And all these crocodile tears mean nothing.
I'm disclaimer that that video is actually factual, but forget the content, Master. I mean, just the fact that somebody who's supposed to be in jail can issue a video statement on social media. But since you were talking about processes, procedures that need reform, accountability, what can or is India doing, and other like-minded countries, to change the UN's processes, to stop, say, these holes? And also, why is the Comprehensive Convention on International Terrorism, originally proposed by India, way back in '96, not being adopted?
You're right. I was a first secretary in New York in 1996, when we first proposed the Comprehensive Convention on International Terrorism. It's 26 years since then. I've moved on. I'm no longer a diplomat. It's got stuck in the labyrinth. So let's understand that the UN system is part substance, but part also process. And international law, unlike law in national jurisdictions, moves by consensus. And this is a challenge. The moment you lack consensus, international law comes to a standstill in its formulation stage. What has been a challenge in terms of the Comprehensive Convention on International Terrorism is the definition of terrorism. There are some who say that it should provide a pathway out for freedom fighters who have genuine reasons to take up arms. But This is yesterday's theological debate. The Security Council after 9/11 has placed on record several times in several of its resolutions that nothing justifies terrorism, irrespective of what is terrorism. It says now that nothing can justify terrorism. So we've moved on. We found other instrumentalities to tackle this. These are not fully satisfactory instrumentalities, but they are better than no options that would have happened without the international convention. So sometimes diplomats make do with what is possible, although the goal will always be to strive for more.
Ambassador Syed Akbaruddin, thank you so much, sir, for your time and sharing your experience and your expertise with us and all our viewers on Strat News Global.
Thank you very much, Amitabh.
And a reminder to our viewers, you can, of course, help financially support us. If you'd like, there is a QR code that's up on the screen. There's a link also in the YouTube descriptor. You've been watching The Talking Point on Strat News Global with Ambassador Syed Akbaruddin. I'm Amitabh Brevi.